recording. All right. So welcome to another robust Women Warriors Breaking the Silence, Part 4. Our panelists today will discuss a wide range of topics surrounding domestic violence. In addition, we will hear their stories of survival. Before I proceed, just some brief housekeeping rules. Please ensure your mics, for participants, please ensure your mics are muted during the discussion. All questions can be typed in the chat areas for the panelists. We kindly ask you not to post any third-party advertisement on this platform. Thank you for your cooperation. My name is Siobhan Hollis. I am the host and the founder of Foreign Women Club of Bermuda and one of the key organizers for today's session. This afternoon is truly exceptional because we have a panelist of ladies who are speaking out, who have earned the title warriors. They have agreed to share with us their experiences and how they overcame their abuses. As usual, before I introduce to you our panelists, can I take a few minutes if I may? Domestic violence is a pervasive, life-threatening crime that affects millions of individuals across borders, including Bermuda. Regardless of age, economic status, race, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, ability, or educational level. It is a pattern of threatening, controlling behavior that can include physical abuse, emotional or psychological abuse, sexual abuse, or deprivation of financial or personal resources. Abusers are able to exert complete control over a victim's every action without ever using violence or only using subtle threats of violence. When we hear about abuse, most people think of physical abuse. However, abuse in many relationships, whether personal or business related, can take many forms, such as power and control, coercion or threats, emotional abuse and intimidation, denying and blaming the victim, using children, stalking, sexual harassment, confinement, politically influenced, or without power. The scope of abuse is too wide to mention in this session. What we would like for is that in Bermuda, our community, NGOs, advocates, and government cooperation. The key is by us coming together, we will help to mitigate and put an end to domestic violence. We trust that our series of candid discussion will touch the hearts of all of you who are watching and that you all do your part in this fight. I now welcome my co-host, Mrs. Tina Laws, relationship specialist and founder of Under Construction, Ms. Kamar Simmons, HR professional, Mrs. Jennifer Outerbridge Smith, training and development coordinator, and our international guest, Mrs. Laverne J. Gordon, founder and president of Love Life Now Foundation Incorporation, joining us live from the United States. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Mrs. Gordon, thank you very much for joining us as well. Please tell us a little more about your background and how you started the Love Life Foundation Incorporation, and followed by Ms. Laws, who will ask the first question, please.
Absolutely, I'll be very brief. So again, my name's Laverne Gordon. I'm the founder of Love Life Now Foundation, which entirely promotes year-round awareness against the issue of domestic violence. Too often you hear domestic violence being profiled when it's surrounding a celebrity or an athlete, or something on the news where murder-suicide has happened or anything of that nature. And we don't want that to be the case. We wanted to keep it in the forefront as much as possible. And I come to this work as a survivor myself, a two-time survivor, as a child witness to it, living in Trinidad for 15 years, where I watched my father brutally abuse my mother till that time and beyond that time, which is when I moved to the United States. The entire time I kept saying that would never be me. And unfortunately, children that witness abuse tend to go on to be the abused or the victim or the abuser. And I was no exception. I became a victim at an early age, at the age of 18. And that relationship lasted for 2 years. And fast forward 10 years later, I took part in a beauty pageant locally and was asked to pick a platform. And domestic violence was an easy choice given my history.
Awesome.
And so I had to go on to nationals because I ended up winning that local pageant and won the national pageant as well. And now I have these two titles and I have to forego, or not forego, but continue on with the platform of TV. And so for the entire year, I just did what was innate to me to raise awareness. And once the year was up, I knew that I wasn't a pageant girl, but I really wanted to continue this work. And so that's where the Love Life Now Foundation was formed. Here we are 9 years later, almost 10 years, and I'm proud to be a survivor, helping to change the narrative around the issue that it's only one type of person that experiences this issue, and just keeping the issue in the forefront and supporting shelters across the state and worldwide as they do the front end work for victims and survivors of abuse.
Awesome. Awesome. My goodness, Laverne. I just always I feel so honored to be in the presence of other survivors because I, along with you, am a survivor. And I know that journey. The journey is so great. And I just think it's such a privilege for all of us to be able to impart on other people's lives. And so
Yes.
I'm co-host Tina Laws, and yes, I am a relationship specialist, but my relationship specialist started some time back, about 6 years ago, when I decided I was going to found Under Construction, which is also domestic violence service, private service for women victims of domestic violence. And so a few years into being the founder and working with victims of domestic violence, I decided to become a certified relationship coach. And so my plight in all of this is always to allow women to get the best relationship of their life. So while I'm a coach and a specialist trying to give everybody the best of what they want, I believe that as victims of domestic violence, we still have that opportunity to get the best life you want in a relationship. Yeah. So that's how it all ties in together. And so today, I just want to, welcome everyone who's watching. I want to welcome all of those who have the courage to come on or even watch the replay to see other women and how we experience it, and to walk away with some tools. Hopefully you can walk away with some tools that can strengthen you to move forward from today, or reach out to any one of us, for support to move forward today. So my first question I'm going to get Jennifer. My first question is for Jennifer, and in actual fact, it's for all of you. You just jump in wherever you see fit. When in your relationship, the abusive relationship that you experienced in your past, when in your relationship did you realize that you were in an abusive situation?
Well, really, Tina, I mean, I actually experienced it through 2 relationships in my past when I was much younger. I mean, the first one, yes, I experienced like the verbal abuse, and I believe it was due to a bad childhood that this, first boyfriend had. But I'm going to focus on the second one because it was quite extreme and intense. But just, I knew as things were getting worse, and it started off with, all the charm and sweeping me off my feet. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is it. And, and it just got gradually worse, very controlling, threatening me, hurting me physically, mentally, forcing me into situations that I should never have been in, basically to save myself from being more harmed. I complied, but I realized, it was just getting more worse. And it actually got to the point where I spoke to one of my coworkers and I said to her, if something happens to me, go after him. So I was in fear for my life, physically. And at that point I was like, I started kind of planning, okay, when's he going to be out of the house? When is a good time? How am I going to do this? So eventually I kind of had a plan. I took only my belongings. I left a lot of things of value behind, which didn't matter at the time. I just needed to be safe. And I just drove back to my mother's house, showed up at her door, and she said, "Oh," and I said, "I'm coming home." And that's all I said to her. But I knew, I mean, when I was at the point where I was, telling a friend that if something should happen to me, if I should end up dead, that it's him and you need to go after him. And after that, I was like, okay, like, I can't go on like this. I mean, I was in fear for my life. So I made the move and away I went.
So we always get so passionate when we're talking about these past situations. So I totally understand. But when did you notice from the beginning of time, like how fresh into the relationship, or a year or 2 or 3 years?
Oh, it wasn't even a year or two. It was more like months, where the control started coming in. He wanted to drive my car. He didn't want me speaking to other people. I had to come home from lunch. It happened pretty swiftly. So it wasn't like there was years of relationship. It happened pretty fast. Yeah.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Laverne, would you want to follow up on that same question?
Yeah, sure. I think in dealing with a lot of victims, and I'll talk about myself very shortly, that, I think for a lot of victims, a lot of the time, they realize almost immediately. And I was quite the same. You don't necessarily have a name to associate with what you're going through, but you know that it's not right. And you know that it's some type of something that in your gut is not kosher. And so for me, it was after the first slap that he had slapped me, and I sat there. He had stormed out right after that happened, and he left, and I was in shock because I couldn't understand what had gotten him to that point. What did I do that was so wrong that would make him react the way that he did? And so when he stormed out, I was left there crying. I was holding my face. My face was hurt. And I'm trying to, again, make sense of it all. But then immediately, once I caught myself and I said, you know what, I didn't do anything wrong. And I equated it with what my mother had went through, what I had seen my mother go through. So she had been badly abused by my father. He used machetes on her. He used beer bottles on her that he would break and stab her with sometimes. And I'm going to be very frank with folks because I want folks to understand the nature, all the levels that abuse can get to. So I, in my mind, immediately equated what I had just went through. Didn't have a name for it, but I equated what I had went through with what I had seen her go through, and immediately just sort of dumbed it down and said, you know what?
I beat women. 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 I beat women.
I think you may have a bot, so you may want to. So you
I
might
beat
want to.
women. I beat women. I beat women.
You may want to X them out.
I beat women.
You want to I think you want to not just mute them. You want to. It's a bot, so you want to. You want to get them off You want to get them off, Tina or Siobhan. There you go. And unfortunately, in the day of technology, this is what we are privy to. So, so in any case, I immediately dumbed it down and said it's not as bad, but I'm done. Look, that's how easy I can exit. And I took a trip, left and went to New York for that weekend, and we can go further, but I accepted the first apology, and that's where the cycle started.
Yeah. Kama, did you want to follow through with when was the beginning stages of the abusive situation you were in? When did you notice that, hey, something's not right in this relationship?
I would say it started very early on. And it wasn't really with me, it was with his previous relationship. I had noticed the verbiage that was going on between the two of them. And I just found it off. But of course, he made it look like it was her, like she was crazy. So I just chopped it off as that. And it was just a lot of little subtle things like if I didn't introduce him to people that I spoke to, maybe I answered or didn't answer properly. I was made to look like I was a problem. So for the longest time, even up until when we broke up, that I just thought it was me. Like, I'm crazy. I have a problem. The abuse started pretty much the day after we got married. It was shocking. I was scared. I didn't even know what to do. I was trying to figure out what I had done because, of course, it just threw me. So during that honeymoon trip, I just stayed quiet. Like, I tried my hardest not to do anything to upset him because I was like, okay, I must have done something. Maybe it was my mouth because I always had a problem expressing myself. And it just started pretty much, the physical started pretty much the day of our honeymoon. And it just shocked me. I didn't even know. I still don't understand how I accepted it, but of course, he made me feel like I was crazy and that I had a problem and I need to fix myself. So I spent my entire marriage trying to fix myself. Yeah.
Thank you, Kama. Well, something I want to add to that Laverne had mentioned about she didn't really recognize what it was. And I think oftentimes now, even as teenagers, we think domestic violence is a black eye or punching in the face, left, right, and center. But for me as well, one of the things I often talk about is that I didn't even know what it was. And so it didn't start with physical until after I got pregnant. That's when it started. Once I got pregnant, the physical abuse, it was almost instantaneously constant. But what I do remember about what I didn't know that I was going through was the lies and the affairs, the extra affairs, and them making me feel like manipulating me into believing that the people were lying and I was crazy and the only reason they're doing this. And so for those of you watching, teenagers even, or those who's probably adults just experiencing this for the first time, domestic violence is not naturally a thing of let me punch you in the eye. It's verbal, it's emotional, so many different things. And so I just wanted to make note of that I didn't even know what it was because he wasn't hitting me initially. But the lies and the deceit and the comparison to other women and the extra affairs of other women, that's also a form of abuse.
Absolutely. And so I do want to add to that as well, right? So we are taught, right, especially in the Caribbean, in the Black community, that it is a black eye, that he has to hit you for it to be something. And even when that happens, it's not that bad, right? So we as women, we as young girls, we're taught from a very early age to be quiet, cross your legs, don't get them upset. If somebody fix it, you are the fixer, right? And so you go into relationships from very early on with these ideas. And I was certainly no exception. Again, quiet, do not speak up, speak when you're spoken to. Whereas my brothers, 3 of them, were told boys will be boys. And you know, if you hit some girl on the playground, that's how you let her know you like her. Or the girl comes home and says, the boy pulled my hair. Well, he likes you. Not that bad. Right? And so we take these ideas into relationships, and sure enough, abusers give us the signs. They let us know a lot of the time that this is who they are. We dismiss them. Our gut tells us that being called 16 times a day before you even get to work, which was my case, is not normal, but you somehow chalk it up to, love. You know what? He loves me. You know, he wants to check in on me and make sure I'm okay. They tell us. By the way we dress, they want to change it up. Our hair, the people we talk to, man, you know what? I don't know why you got so much friends. You look desperate, girl. I love you. You don't need that many friends. So you window down how many people you're talking to, right? You start, that isolation process begins. And so all these things are there. We just are taught from early on, it's nothing.
And from childhood, we're also taught, and we've seen it, because we do. I always say with my children, my husband and I was their television, right? So children, parents and whoever the guardians are actual television. So we just watch it. And so a lot of what we see is what we do, even though we say, I'm never going to do that. But you get a certain age, here you go coughing out your mama, because I do it all the time. But one of the things I'll say is that the other thing we talk about a lot and we think is because there's a breadwinner. So a lot of times when our grandparents, great-grandparents, we knew our grandmothers, our moms, most of them, my mom was a working mom, but stayed home and made sure the house was clean, kept kids and done all that. And he was the breadwinner. So you just chalk it up and keep quiet and make sure he pays those bills. You save the money. And so all of these things, you know, trigger us to have this conversation and us being survivors.
Yeah, and for me, if I may,
yes,
I mean, growing up, it wasn't talked about. It wasn't talked about in school. I mean, I think it should be in schools. I mean, to see, because young teens are experiencing this or seeing it at home. And it wasn't talked about when I was growing up. I mean, and by no fault of my parents, like, you know, it wasn't a discussion that was had in the home, or I wasn't aware of what these red flags were, you know, until after, you know, I went to like a group counseling session, and then I was like, oh, check.
All of these are me.
All the above, you know. So I didn't have the awareness, even though I had been in a situation previously. Plus, I think we tend to, like, I try to find like the good in people, you know. Oh, he's struggling with his past, or you know, but he's so intelligent, or oh, but he's got a lot of these good qualities.
So you have to fix him.
Yeah,
You have to help fix him.
So I'm going to be his counselor now, even though I'm, you know, the brunt of everything. But yeah, we tend to focus on, you know, oh, well, you know, it's because of this, that, or the other, you know. But, you know, meanwhile,
for me, I was very embarrassed about it. I was very embarrassed. So I would cover myself up with makeup. And when somebody did notice a bruise or anything, I would have my story ready. Because I didn't want people to see me as that person, because I work as an HR professional and I'm always helping people. So I just looked at them seeing me as, you know, a fraud or weak, because you know, I'm being abused. So it was like that. I kept it hidden pretty much the entire time we were together.
Yeah.
And before Siobhan asks us her question, because I know she's steaming in that seat to get a nice question ready for you guys. Laverne had mentioned she was very quiet, right? But I wasn't. I was the mouthy one, right? And so I was the one to tell you like it is. When what? You did what? You will? Oh, I'll tell you like it. So it was even, I felt it was harder for me to be able to tell somebody my secret, because they knew me to be I was a relationship coach before I even knew what that was, right? Back to this thing. But I was always helping other people with their relationships. I was always that go-to person in my circle. And then I was always the one to say, they did what? Oh yeah, well, you better tell. So it made it very difficult for me to now say I'm weak, because that's what we feel. You know, I'm really a wimp. You know, and so I think I love this, but I think it's important that whether you're quiet, whether you're a mouthpiece like me and a comedian like Jan and just real nice and easy like Kama, I think it's important that it happens to all of us. Okay, Dr. Vaughn.
And even more so that nobody has the right to put their hands on you or abuse you verbally or emotionally. And so I just want to make a correction. So I was not quiet. I was taught to be quiet, and I acted quiet in front of my parents. But when I went to school,
it all came out. Okay, man.
I don't mind, because it's all flowing, so that's okay. I can hold off on my question. I just want to hear your stories, because like I said, it is resonating with quite a bit of persons. Like I've gotten persons who was like, keep it going, you know, you and Tina, keep it going. I wanted to, and I agree with Laverne. I've heard Tina and everybody that in certain culture, even in my country from the Bahamas, it's like a guy talk rough to you, hey, get over it, you know how we go, amen, man. So they make it acceptable. And then some use the submissive verse out of the Bible to say a woman should be submissive. I've heard that from growing up small, you know, in a home with a bunch of guys. So they try to steal you and coerce you and try to put you in a box where, okay, be quiet, a good wife's supposed to be quiet, or girlfriend, and you know, you speak after a man, and they try to use all those sort of psychological
Yes.
stuff around you. I wanted to ask a question. I had a few persons send this to me. So one of the most, I should say, popular question I had was, why did you stay? And each one of you can answer that in the way you take that. They said, well, okay, you know from the start, you know, people tend to blame the victim. You know from the start, you saw the red flags, but for some people, they end up staying longer, years, decades. Why did you stay in your situation? That's the question. Or took long to leave, or however.
I really truly loved him. At least that's what I thought. And again, I was made to feel like I had the problem. So I spent my entire marriage trying to get help for myself. And even though I was told that it wasn't me, he was so good at making me look like I was crazy. So despite everything that he did to me, I always chalked it up to, I need to get myself fixed. I need to fix it. I just need to get it sorted. Going to therapy for so many years and hearing the same thing, but he was so good at manipulating me to make me look like I need to get myself together. Plus, I wanted to have a child. It never happened. So, you know, when I found out about his affair, I blamed myself for it. So it was just so much stuff that I had in my head about me being a problem. And despite me trying to fix it, it just seemed like it wasn't enough. So it just got to a point where I just need to just leave this. That's how I felt about it for me, and why I stayed, mostly because I blamed myself.
That's very typical. Jan, did you want to share?
Again, my first encounter was, I really did love him very much. We did separate. We got back together, and he ended up having a severe medical issue. So I'm glad I was there for that portion. But then as he went through recovery, he became very angry again because he needed help to do everything, etc. And it just got to the point where one day he, was smashing, glasses, and I said, I have to go. But can you repeat the question again so I don't go off the rails?
Yeah, no, the question was, most people are asking, why did you stay?
Oh, why did I stay? Yeah. So in that situation, the first one, it wasn't all the time. The second situation that I speak to that was very intense and very scary, pretty much every day, it was not that I stayed hoping it would be better. I was in complete survival mode every single day, basically on high alert, walking on eggshells, just trying to survive. And I basically was living each day waiting for the opportunity to go. So there was no staying because I thought it was going to work. I couldn't fix him. So I was just in survival mode, just waiting for the opportunity where I can get out safely.
Laverne?
Yeah, so I can speak for my mom as I normally do, who lives in Trinidad still. And so her reasons were financial. He was the breadwinner, as I think Tina, you said earlier. He was the financial breadwinner. There were 5 children, and she barely had an elementary school education. Where was she going to take 5 children and go and support them in the ways that they needed? She loved him. They were married for 25 plus years. I physically saw the abuse for 15 of those. And self-esteem, right? She believed over the years that she was not worth more than what he told her. He tried to take away the very essence of her. And so, she always believed that he was the only one, and obviously fear. And so for me, it was none of those. I was college educated. By the time I met my abuser, I had an entry-level job in corporate America, and I was going to school at a university. and on my way to getting my own apartment. And for all intent and purposes, I should not have been that person. In my mind, I was smarter than this. And it was shame for me. I did not want anybody to know that this smart person had let themselves fall into this type of relationship. And this is what I was thinking that people would say. I didn't want my school to find out, and I certainly didn't want my job to find out. As a Black woman working in corporate America, you know, where you are one of 2 Black women in the office, you do not want people to think that stereotype continues. The Black woman bringing drama to the job, because he would show up at my place of work during my breaks and strangle me, berate me for the type of underwear I was wearing, accuse me of trying to pick up someone in the office. And so all of these things just kept me quiet. And by the time I did end up leaving, it's because I was living in my own apartment. And I'm not going to get into that. I'm sure you guys are going to ask that question. But, again, I'm living in this building where there are, it's a mixed society of people. And I'm supposed to be together. When I step outside my door, I'm together. And I don't want anybody knowing what I'm going through. So shame, guilt, low self-esteem, and not wanting to be blamed were my reasons. And I stayed.
Yeah. In my case, I didn't involve other people because I was actually afraid for their safety. My girlfriend that I did tell her, if something happens to me, she said, I want you to get your stuff and you're going to come and stay with me and my family. And I said, no, I can't put you in danger.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have called anyone. I could have called my cousins. I mean, there's 3 hockey players, but I didn't want anyone else. I didn't want anyone else involved. I didn't want them drawn into the crazy world I was living in. And I didn't want anybody hurt.
That fear out of anything will keep you complacent. Absolutely.
And one of the other things, well, many of the other reasons why people stay is, there are several things, but I can speak to, there are reasons as to why there are people who have a mortgage together. They're staying in that relationship. They have children overseas in school, some of them in boarding school, some of them in private school, some of them in private nursery, finances, so they got to stay there. They have children, you have children. And for some people, like in my instance, I grew up in a single parent home. And so I wanted to make it work because you now have a family together. And so, you don't want to break that relationship up. There are people that feel as though if they walk away, was even in me, they will tell you this person's going to get treated better. So you stay because you just keep thinking you're going to be that actual one to get the better treatment. If you let them go, Sarah and Jane's not going to be treated much better than you are. There are reasons as to fear. You talked about all those things, but there are so many reasons. Some people's mentally ill. And so the guilt of walking away from someone who struggles with mental health issues, and they make you feel as though you're the only one that knows, so you feel so sorry, you're the only one who fixes them. So you stay because they're stuck in this mentally ill state. And so how can you now throw them away? You can't throw them out, you can't throw them away. And so there are so many substance use, there are so many things that as a victim of domestic violence you deal with and you endure that people don't know behind the scenes, that there are so many. The reasons are vast.
Yeah,
I agree.
And I think, to bring it, to keep bringing it back to this point is that the question should never be why, and we ask this question for educational purposes, obviously, but, society-wise, it should never be, why did she stay? It should always be, why do they do this? And why are they not held more accountable, right? So, again, just changing that narrative, right? And for educational purposes, I get it. We have to ask that question because we want others to know that that shouldn't be the reason, because there's so much help available. If you decide that you're done with it and you've reached your breaking point.
That's it right there. A lot of people, and I feel like I always say, when you hear people talking about domestic violence, different agencies around the world, they talk about stats, they talk about what it is, domestic violence is this. And I get frustrated sometimes. People say, my goodness, you get so passionate. And I get passionate because those of us who have been victims, just speaking to the congregation, the converted, we know. What we need to know is, what are we going to do for those who are abusing? And so when we talk about why did you stay? We're actually talking to the population, I'm assuming, because some people have been in it and they forget, but we're actually talking to those who haven't a clue what domestic violence looks like.
Education, absolutely.
Yeah, so when
Yes.
people ask that question, my first inkling is we know when they're talking to a victim. We know when they're talking to a survivor. So we have to be talking to someone that hasn't a clue what domestic violence really looks like in the lives of those who have part of or who have survived it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Agree.
I agree.
Now, there are many women from middle to upper class that are less likely, let's say, to use government assistance. A study estimated this, or emergency housing, social assistance, or police attention. Unlike perhaps the ordinary woman or probably someone who's less fortunate. Is this demographic being disadvantaged in regards to acquiring the right support? Well, for women who live in what they say picket fence in the big houses, the rich areas behind the gates, who may not, who most likely could be going through it, I'm sure. And they're not reporting it because why? You know, the husband are executive, or you know, they probably wouldn't reach out to. Do you feel that this demographic is being kind of left out in terms of getting the support that they need, or?
So we can go from both ends of the spectrum as far as that's concerned. It can be and I can tell you that they're not being left out because they do end up seeking help by way of a friend, and a friend of a friend who might be watching something like this, right? That leads them in that direction. Maybe they never reach out for help, but they have the means to exit, or they feel like they don't have the means because of their financial status. They want to stay to keep that picture, as you talk about, together. But we can also go on the other end of the spectrum. You may have somebody that's an immigrant that is, you know, being in that position, or just as the same rich and privileged, but cannot because the abuser is a national. They know the language, they know who to talk to, they know what to say to get past the police. And they will keep that person there out of fear of being deported. They give them a whole bunch of myths that they cannot, you know, reach out for help because if you talk, you will get arrested and be deported, and then all those sorts of things. There can be any sort of high level reason that, you know, folks end up staying. And I think that's just one of them. But I can succinctly tell you that oftentimes folks in that stature, they are getting the help. And they will get the help. If you've gotten to your breaking point and you cannot take it anymore, trust and believe, and if you're ready for help, you will find help one way or the other. I'm currently dealing with, so one of the things that our foundation does is point people in the right direction for help. And again, they come by way of a friend, somebody that they heard, you know, something like this, that they heard something, and they point them out, right? And so they reach out and they say the same things that we are talking about here today. They couldn't reach out because they were afraid of being outed. They couldn't reach out because of shame. They couldn't reach out because of their kids. Their kids live a certain sort of lifestyle that they don't want to leave. And to take them away from that is crazy. And so in the beginning, when I started this work, I had to volunteer with a domestic violence shelter because I wanted to sort of help the shelter, but also be sort of ingrained of as to what they were doing. And to do that, you had to take a domestic violence training course. And so I ended up in the shelter, and I would volunteer maybe every other weekend so that the women would have time away from their kids. I would sit and watch their kids for them. And in that shelter at that particular time, it's a 3 months stay that you are allowed to stay, emergency stay that you're allowed to stay. There was a rich woman, there was an immigrant woman, there were 2 lesbians, and there was, she was a citizen, but of a different culture, Cape Verdean. And so all of these women had the same things in common. They all were escaping abuse, right? And so the rich woman, she took a while to warm up to me because again, she still had that, she was about 2 weeks into her stay at the shelter. And she still had that sort of mindset that I'm not supposed to be here. But she was, because she'd had enough. And I can tell you again that I don't think folks are being kept away, I think they find the help either through lawyers or a friend of a friend. And I think they have more access than per se the immigrant woman that was maybe brought here by her abuser with the promise of marriage, and then no marriage ever happens, and the abuse ensues, and you are stuck, right? So there's so many sort of avenues that people end up finding the help. Some people, I think more so those folks that are, you know, poor and downtrodden or immigrant status, they are the ones that probably will never ever get the help because they don't speak the language, they don't have any friends, they don't have any family here. They are the ones that are, you know, possibly never going to get help and are sort of lost in the system.
And let me just add to that. Go ahead, Kam. I'll wait till you're finished.
I agree. For me, it was more, I was being more protective of him. I don't know why. I guess it was because of what he did for a living. I didn't want his job involved or anything like that. I just felt like even though he was hurting me regularly, I still needed to protect him. And then I didn't want anybody to know. So it was just like, I was in survival mode and I'm trying to protect somebody that's physically harming me regularly. So it was tough.
And one of the things I'll say, that's what actually encouraged me to start on the construction years ago in 2016, was because I was working with corporate women and those of that nature. And you find a lot of women of that nature. Like one of my very first clients who came in my office week in and week out, I worked with her for about 6 months. And money wasn't an issue. She said, "Girl, I could pay." So money wasn't an issue, but one of the things that she said, and she knows who our the actual director of our domestic violence center, the only one in Bermuda, she knows there's people, you know, there's people, because Bermuda's small. And so it wasn't that she had any gripe or anything with that agency, but because she was who she was, she wanted to do it privately. So that's why I really started my business. But one of the things I'm going to rewind and talk about is, we talked about those women who live in with the picket white fences, right? Remember this, many of those women also endure the exact same behaviors from their partners. But what I will say is this: I've worked in 3 domestic violence centers in Florida, right? And of course we know we can't name them, but 3 of them. And what I will tell you is this: although they all live that type of lifestyle way up there, we're thinking, oftentimes these type of gatherings, and I was talking about it, encourages them, because one, they don't want their girlfriends or their social bodies to know what they're going through. So you will find them in our type of circles because nobody knows them. And so we have to continue to do what we're doing, because although many of them are socialites, and we'll call it, right, and they're supporting the husbands because the husbands are CEOs and doing all these things, they will continue to look for things like this. And it might just be this one. It might just be one time where they look and say, you know what, those women aren't on my level, but they look like they've experienced it. They feel like I could warm up to them, and I'm going to go to the group setting. So, you know, we have to remember that although people are at a certain caliber financially, because that's all we're talking about, finances, their emotions are very, very, very similar to each and every one of us. And so we just have to keep marketing, I say, keep putting it out there, because we may find that person that may be able to fund our whole business, fund your business and mine, and that can fund it 10 times over, but they may just enjoy that space of, I can get somewhere and really let my hair down. I'm not going to feel like people's looking at me, and be comfortable. So we have to keep doing what we're doing, because we will, you know, we will reach those who need to be reached when they are ready.
Good,
Very
good.
true.
I wanted to ask you ladies, go into the church aspect of it, without calling a particular religion. I grew up where I'm used to hearing a wife should be submissive, a woman should be submissive to a man, and, you know, all of that. And for some situation, like I had an aunt who was abused by my uncle. And it was basically like you say, you know, I grew up in Bahamas on the island, where it's like a woman should know their place, take up the man, food, other things. So nothing wrong with that part of it, but the scripture in the Bible, I can't remember where you find it, but it speaks about being submissive as a wife. And I think sometimes that is taken out of context. where men tend to use that as a halo or to control
Yes.
a relationship. Kamar, if you want to kind of speak to that. If you
Trust me, I heard that a lot of times. Hearing that I'm the king of this castle and you need to do what I say. I need to stop talking back. We had pretty much equal salaries. I probably made a little more, but I was made to feel like, listen, you need to do as I say. Of course, there's a lot of religious people in the family, so I had to hear, stuff being coming out of the Bible, and I was just stunned by the things that people were trying to get me to understand. Like, you need to just listen to your husband, and then you wouldn't have these problems, pretty much. So yeah, that was my issues also. Yeah, and he fed into it. He loved that people were actually saying that stuff to me or giving him that information to pass on to me. So yeah, he used that all the time.
any other ladies can speak of that, or maybe of something that they're using to keep you in submission?
I didn't have an experience as far as using the church or, scripture or anything like that. It was just a constant control, constant fear, constant walking on eggshells. And I did talk to a couple of his friends at one point that I was friendly with. And, I said, like, I think he's crazy. Like, this is not normal. Oh, I said, he's threatening me. He's threatening to kill me. Oh, he would never really do it though. So that kind of, and there was very, very few people, to this day that don't know, but it was that outside, he would never really hurt you. He's just spouting off, or, but nothing like, say, from like the church or using scripture against me. It was just pure 100% control.
Yeah, so the church issue is insanely prevalent, where domestic violence is rampant. And I will say that, I don't know for other states, I don't know for other cities, but in my region here in Massachusetts, there are a number of churches that have talked about domestic violence from the podium, from the pulpit. And that's where it needs to be talked about, right? Because, alcoholism, drugs, that's not the only thing, that's not the only two sins that are, that needs to be, broadcasted. A lot of the times victims, if they will not seek help, police, they will go to their pastors for counsel.
Yes.
And a lot of the times they are counseled to stay in the marriage because, that's what God ordained, and you do not want to break up a family. It is a cardinal sin to get a divorce and even think about it. And it's the absolute wrong thing. There's a group that here in the States called the Association for Haitian something or other, I forget, I'm sorry. And so every year they host what's called a clergy breakfast, and it brings all of the pastors in their circle together to talk about domestic violence. And maybe about 2 years ago, I was brought in to speak. We also do domestic violence workshops, awareness workshops at high schools. I think, Jennifer, you were talking about that it should happen that way.
Absolutely.
There's a ton of DV workshops, teen domestic violence workshops that happen throughout the state. And it's held by agencies that do the frontline work. We do it as well. And so I was brought in to do this workshop for the clergy. And a lot of them were so very open to, at least having the discussion for their congregation, because they have been in contact with so many victims in their church. And nobody wanted to say anything. And so I applauded these pastors. I went to a few of their churches and I did the workshops, and I can tell you succinctly, after that workshop, and it happens the same way with teens as well, at least 1 to 3 women come up saying, me too, right? And they didn't know that there was help beyond what they were doing, from what they were hearing and going through. And they're so glad that their pastors did this. Same thing for teens. 1 in every 3 teens will be abused in their lifetime, right? 1 in every 4 women, right? 1 in every 3 teens. I want you to just sit on that statistic real quick, right? So those 2 statistics mean that out of the 7 of us, at least 1 of us, right? 2 of us have gone through this issue, which we know all of us that are talking about this, right? And so the issue is that we're not speaking up. Imagine that for someone, a woman of faith, right? Who's been told all her life, do not ever think about divorce. And all they have is pastor's counsel and prayer. God helps those who help themselves, if you want to go that route, right? So we talk about this from the, it's important to talk about it in churches because it's so rampant. And a lot of the times too, it's because the husbands are sitting as stature in the church. They're a deacon, they're clergyman, they're the pastor, right? So these women are staying there, right? And they're like, there's no way I will go against you. The church will go against me. I'll be looked as the crazy one, not knowing there's help outside of the church. So having these types of discussions and having folks understand that this is not where it's at is insanely important.
And I think to add to that, Laverne, is that we have to be mindful that our church is filled with us, right? And so we often look to everybody else. We look to the pastor to do everything, but whoa, the church is built up of people. Right? Some of us saints, some of us seeking, some of us aren't. And so one of the things I often say, because I've spoken at my church every October, a picture comes up of me talking about domestic violence in my church. That's First Church of God. I spoke at Mount Zion in Bermuda. And so there are churches that do call, I've spoken at another church too, my goodness. But there are churches that do request information. And so what we need to be mindful of is that as well as everybody else needs to be educated, we also need to know that the churches need to be educated, because while there are battlers everywhere you go, doctors, lawyers, magistrates, everywhere, teachers, everywhere you go, you're going to find a batterer. Your doctor could be a batterer, saving your life, but he just beat his wife and children. So we have to be mindful that we don't get so caught up in the church per se. And I know we're talking for everybody else to learn, but remember, as it relates to being in any churches, we have to be those ones to go in and educate. Now, I'm a member of that church, and my girlfriend, her husband's the pastor of Mount Zion. And so the opportunity was there. When people know what you do, they call you in to do it because they want to know as well, because everybody has that area of remit. And so while they may be reverends, some may be teachers, some, those of us who's working in domestic violence realms or been taught or trained, we have the opportunity to go in and speak to the majority. And so we can't continue to even have people feeling as though, oh my goodness, I can't say anything. I remember when I spoke at my church one night, and about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks later, and we know, those of us know who, we can spot a victim or a batterer a mile away. I can, right? And so most of us. And so it was about 3 weeks later, and I remember this one lady coming to me, and she said, sis, I know somebody who needs your help. And I said, oh, no problem. Take my card, call me. And of course, the call never came. About some time later, she saw me. Oh my goodness, I looked up your website. I said, okay, good. When you're ready, we're here, blah, blah, blah. I knew she was the victim because she was testing the waters. But it took weeks and weeks. And then another time she came and said, being a Christian is really difficult, because how do Christians, come in and say that they are being abused? I said, well, how do Christians say that you fell down and don't get up, or get up? How do Christians repent? The same thing, we all suffer with something, right? Yeah. And so we are all broken people. That's why I got saved. I was good and broken. And so I said, Lord, please help me. Right? And so one of those things I needed help with was to learn to love myself more after being in an abusive relationship. And so for those of you who may even be Christians, who may be on the pulpit, I had a client whose husband is a pastor. I'm talking about years ago. He's a pastor. And she used to wonder how he'll be up there preaching the word and everybody respecting and loving him. But when he comes home, he's so cruel to her and her child. I'll just say that, right? And she couldn't understand. But one of the things we worked through was that he had to get help as well. But we had to get her to a place of knowing that this is bad behavior. I don't care what he does or she does. This is abuse is not warranted. Nobody should go through abuse, right? And so we had to get her to a place of knowing this is wrong. Firstly, it's not your fault. You are not at blame. And so then once she got that, she was able to go and seek further supportive services. Once she was able to go seek supportive services, it helped her to realize why she might have been going through all of that. She was going through a lot of childhood growing up. And so while that's not the blame, that triggered her to be in this relationship and think she was the blame to stay there, right? She was at fault. And full speed ahead, it encouraged her enough confidence and strength to say to him, listen, it's either you're going to go get help or the congregation is going to wonder why we're getting a divorce. And so, it's just a matter of getting that support and knowing that you're not alone and educating yourself. And so as it relates to the church, if they don't know, they don't know. And if you have a church where nobody's talking about it, well, why would you? It's like, I always say, it's like a plague. When you talk about certain things, people don't want to talk about it because you're not talking. Well, let's us be as people like me and everybody else and talk about it. And I think the more we all talk about it, the more people will see, oh, wait a minute, we can't hush that no more. We're going to talk about it and get it worked on. So, as it relates to churches, church is a body, right? And that body is us human people.
Yeah.
Remember that, right? Don't forget that.
And I think it doesn't even have to start on a large level, right? So if you just bring up the issue with your church's women's group, your teen group, and just anything, whether it doesn't even have to be let it sort of lead and flow as it may. Bring in some literature from the local DV agency and just sort of ask to have it put out on the welcome desk, wherever, and sort of let it just continue. You continue to do the work, you continue to speak, but let it just be there.
And so the embarrassment is so attached to everywhere you go. But just think about this, or not just you ladies, but those listening. Think about this. How would you feel if you just gave birth to your brand new baby, twins, triplets, whatever they are, and they're so sweet, and your doctor nursed you throughout that whole 9-10 months and was just such an amazing support for you, and you found out he was a batterer? Would you leave him? Would you walk away from him? That's I just want to leave you there, because people say, well, oh, here's a Christian, or here's this, and all these things. People forget we're human, right? And so that happens in a lot of instances. These people are human, but they also have flaws.
Yes.
Tamar, you wanted to say something? Are you
I
good?
totally agree. Yes, it's a lot of people that hide behind the church when it comes to domestic violence. And so that's why I'm here speaking up. Because I've been to all of the church, teachers, everybody that I could think of, that I know, so many that are involved and hiding behind their abuse. So yeah.
Now, the World Health Organization, due to COVID-19, and many families being isolated, or families, having to stay together, unfortunately, too, a lot of victims of abuse, and there have been a stark increase in domestic violence globally. Also, in Bermuda has reported a rise in domestic violence. I guess my question would be, what would you panelists would want to see in terms of, from a legal standpoint, the law, I know the system, obviously, but what would you like to see to perhaps help to spread? I know there are information out there and support out there, but in terms of a more expansive support for victims of domestic violence, maybe, so I would like to hear from, you ladies, what you think.
I guess from my standpoint is that I'm still learning more about the laws. It's not out there. Our laws are not out there. Read about the current laws of domestic abuse and the, consequences and what happens. Like, I feel like here in Bermuda that I would have to really dig. Like, I have to dig to find those laws. I think they should be more readily available. And yes, we have numbers that we've published and everything during COVID. Our police commissioner has said, please call if you are in danger. We will come and get you. He has said that publicly. But I think just more of as a society that we need more advocates, more conversation. I know, especially if someone is in their house trapped. I mean, I've seen videos where, you know, there's a sign for abuse. I guess it's the like palm up with the thumb. Sorry,
Yeah.
I have a background, so I come in and out. But we kind of have like a universal sign that if someone's listening and you're trapped in the house, that there's something, if you're on video with your friends, that they're like, uh-oh, she's in danger. Because in the advertisement I've seen on Facebook for this hand gesture, the, you know, supposed abuser, the actor, is right behind her listening to the conversation. So I think more awareness, because people do tend to think, well, that's none of my business. Like, I can hear them fighting over there, but it's none of my business. And like, I find even if I'm going for a walk and I hear raised voices, I stop dead in my tracks. Like, I feel this need to protect. And some people are like, well, you could get hurt. Like, you don't know, that person could have a weapon. But I think if we raise that level of awareness as a society, that we will have more of us advocates walking around, kind of on alert. But I think the laws, like I feel like we need to make them more public, more easily accessible, explain what happens in the, if you call the police, what's going to happen. I know you can file a complaint, but they're not necessarily, they're not charged. They're two different things here. But I think it needs to be made more public, because I think people think if I call the police, he's going to go to jail. That's not the case necessarily. And I mean, Tina can speak more to this. But I mean, when I went through, I mean, it was in Ontario, Canada, it wasn't in Bermuda, but I went to the police station and I just filed a report in case, again, something happened to me. And I didn't file the charge. But you know, that awareness of what are our laws, you know, what happens if I call the police, you know. Yeah.
So we actually had a few weeks back, we had one of these actual sessions, and I invited the detective constable, domestic violence liaison for Bermuda Police on, and she actually elaborated on, you know, what happens when from the time you call the police right along up to if you decide to or not to press charges. And I think that's true. People need to know what their rights are, what the laws are. But BermudaLaws.bm is very clear. You can go on BermudaLaws.bm for Bermuda, and you can look up, you know, the various laws attached to it. And I think too, I agree with you, Jan, that more needs to be said. And I always, every time I'm in these type of settings, I often say, you know, we need to have more out there. People need to know. Everywhere you go, we need to know. We see Scars. Scars is doing a phenomenal job. As a facilitator, I'm not bragging because I've been a facilitator for many years, but Debbie and her crew and Helen and these girls, they're doing a phenomenal job. All these guys are doing a phenomenal job with promoting Scars. And so, not comparing, but I just feel like we can do this for domestic violence. And it's so many of us that are trained, untrained, advocates, victims, victors, that we can come together and raise a greater awareness. And I think that's most important right there. Bermuda's so small. We're Laverne, parts of the world. I was in Florida, well, goodness, with so many domestic violence agencies because it's so large, right? Bermuda's so small. And so I don't understand why we don't have so much out there. But I think the more we all talk about it, I've noticed just this year since the pandemic, so much of us are coming on that everybody's getting on and just doing what they have to do. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we raise awareness. And then for our only stance against abuse, right? That would also help in that way for government and whomever supports their finances to say, hey, you know, we need to step our game up because this is what the people need, right? And so I think together we can do this. But one of the things I think I would say that will have to change, I think that was your question, Siobhan. What was the question before I answer, please?
Yeah, the question, Tina, was with the lockdown, you know, the spike and increase, what would you like to see, you know, happen in terms, yes, to mitigate and go to support or
Well, like we said, we talked about much more promoting domestic violence, what it looks like, what it doesn't look like, what it can look like, the supportive services that's in Bermuda. The same way we have TV on the news on, Burn News comes on every day for conference report. Hey, we need to be talking about it everywhere you go, because a lot of people that's inside, they only have access to television, right? Some of them don't get the newspapers. Some of them is not on social media, or the being watched, the partners watching on social media. So we need to be able to come to them via some form of television, some form where we can get in. And I also say too, those who have been in these situations since the pandemic, unless they covered it up really well, most family or friends have an idea that something's not right. That's one. We all know, we all see something, we've seen something, we've heard something. And so I would rather say that we would need to be more supportive. And we know the pandemic, we can't knock on the door and walk inside without a mask. But I think just, being visible, showing up outside, tooting, hey, what's happening? And just looking at the body language. If you really know your friends and family, you should know if something's wrong, and we can't cover it up. Yeah, I done a good job at it, but you can still tell if somebody's talking, not talking. Just really watch the body language. And if that partner's over their shoulder, we're talking about women, but there are women battlers as well. So, we need to keep an eye out, not just for men that's being the battlers, but we also need to be clear that there are women that are battlers as well. And so sometimes we can miss the mark because we're so focused on him not beating her that we'll miss the mark that our brother just got his head split wide open, or punched in the eye. And so I think the more we talk about it, the more we do these sessions, and all the sessions that I do and Siobhan's doing and everybody's doing, Cam and all we guys, I think it's important that we just continue to raise awareness. And I think, if we keep talking about it, putting it in everybody's face, it will become the norm. Remember years ago, HIV wasn't a topic. It was, shh, oh my goodness, don't say anything. Breast cancer was a, shh, oh my goodness, I don't want nobody to know. No, we're having HIV, we're having breast cancer awareness walks. We're talking about autism, autistic children's out there. The shame is no longer attached as it used to be. So I just think, and that's because they made such a big stink. They raised awareness about it. And so I think, and not that they made it normal, but it was normal to be able to talk about it because these things happen. So, like depression and PTSD, all these things, mental health, the same as domestic violence. It just so happens that victims of domestic violence also suffers with breast cancer and mental health issues and PTSD and every other form of health, medical conditions that can be, they also suffer with it. So I think the more we talk about it, the more we think about it, I think it becomes normal for people to say, oh, wait a minute, I'm a victim, or I am a battler, I need help.
Yeah, so I've actually spoken to a lot of victims right now since the pandemic. That have reached out to me because they know my story. I just say we need to believe everything. When people tell you that or give you some signs, believe it. Because there's a lot of people
survivors, absolutely,
don't want to believe that this is happening and just say, it's not a big deal. You'll be fine. And it just gets me upset. So I always tend to believe everything what everybody says, whether it be small. And I reach out to everybody that I know of that's going through abuse every day to check on them if they need my help. What do they need? I can pick them up. That's what I do because I would want that to happen for me. So that's what I do on a regular basis.
That's awesome, Kama.
And so as it relates to COVID, and what I'd like to see is more access to chat services and text. So people are home, right? Where a victim would expect that their abuser would, leave and go to work during this time. That's not happening. And we've been in contact with more than a few folks where this is the case. So there's one victim, she's an EMT. And she has to use her car ride home to make calls about a divorce and a restraining order that she's seeking against him, about moving out silently. And, when she gets in the house, there's no way that she can pick up the phone and call, even if she's in imminent danger. So access to that, services, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is able to start a chat. You're able to start a chat on their website and seek help where you're in your area. But again, for Bermuda, if you're saying that, it's so small and awareness isn't really key, how, well, creating awareness, right? So PSAs. A lot of people have social media, even though some don't. A lot of people have social media and they're paying attention to their phones, even more so now. So creating a PSA that can, continue to be shared amongst others, creating more Zoom formats like this, so that folks can join on at their leisure, recording it. I see it's recording so that it can be shared later on, reaching out to groups, team groups that meet, church groups that meet offline, away from social media, where people don't have access, or might not have access to it. So just opening up. I guess I would say not waiting for others to make that way, but making the way, and then having them come to it, because HIV, you're so correct. Back in the 80s, it was not a thing. You were looked at like the plague if you had anybody, or even if you were related to someone that had HIV. Now there's commercials. There are gay people that have HIV that are splashed against your TV screen because it's normal. It's because it's happening, because it's here. Thousands and thousands of dollars have gone into funding to make awareness campaigns. And I think, again, even if you start small and have it spread, that's the way to go. Flyers that, can be shared. It's easy to hit a share button. And even if nobody shares it, they're seeing it. So just putting the information out there as any way you see fit is the way to go. And again, expanding chat service for agencies that already use.
And we have, we have a community channel for cable television that we can use. We can put up, we can advertise a Zoom meeting, you can advertise an event, you can just, for help, please call. So that's a very easy thing to do, is to get your information on channel 1 here.
Absolutely. I think, again, when you're talking about this issue, because it affects so many, we think we have to be so big with it, right? But not realizing that it's so, starting so small, because the neighbor next door, I think, Kama, you spoke about, being there for people, just talking to your neighbors as you take for us. So we're really adhering to the social distancing rules. So we're always walking our block. Our block is a circular block. So we're walking, we're seeing neighbors that we haven't seen in the entire time we've lived here. And so I'm talking to our neighbors, and I'm, I work from home. I run a DV awareness group, and if you know anybody, that's how word spreads. It doesn't take necessarily a big splash to let word travel that this is what can happen. And, just saying, I am here a lot of the time. So the most dangerous time for victims is when they decide to leave. So, okay, you've seen the awareness campaigns, you know what to do. You may know about this, whatever sign, because there's so many out there of what to do on social media. There's so many different things that it's not really cohesive. So you may know about the sign. Okay, now I recognize it. Now what do I do to help this person? So Kama said, being there, offering support. I can pick you up and take you to the DV agency. I can pick you up and take you to the police station. If you need a ride, if you don't have anything to watch the kids, I will watch the kids. All of these things. You don't have any money to go to, to go rent a car that you may need to escape when it's time. I'll take you there. All of these little things add up to helping victims when they've reached their breaking. So it doesn't take a lot is what I really want to sort of end the point with. It doesn't take a lot.
And it starts with...
It's that ripple effect, right? So it starts really small and it spreads throughout. And that's what leaving has to look like if somebody is really seeking support.
And I think you are so on par. I think too, we're going to be mindful that since this pandemic is also, we're going to be kind of careful, because like me, for one, you really don't want to be in close proximity with other people too long, right? And so for me, I went to an event the other day and I was way over here. My girlfriends were like, why are you over here? And I'm somebody's over there. That's just me, because first of all, I have a mom with me, so I have to be safe, right? But you know, we have to be safe.
Exactly.
But, you know, I think during this time, it's now it's phase 4, so it's not as tight, you know, thankfully. But hopefully the numbers don't pile up.
Rise again.
Yeah, but before that, it was so easy just to call and say, where are you? Let's come pick you up. Where are you?
Yeah.
Come to your house, come to my house. You know what I mean? Now it's like, it's so sticky because you're not knocking to my door and coming in, because my mama's going to meet you halfway and say, you can't come in, you know, so many things. So I think, so for me, what I've been finding to do and what's been making it easier, not just for my domestic violence clients, but my coaching clients alike and couples, we've been meeting in beaches and parks, right? And so that's been nice because it's nice and breezy, but you know, you have to get there first. You know, we have to get them there first. And some of them don't have money, some of them don't have transportation and all of those things. So we do know,
call them an Uber, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
we can't be
well,
like,
taxi here.
Taxi,
or a
yeah.
taxi, right? So all I'm saying is that, all I'm saying is that it doesn't take a lot, right? So
No.
again, with COVID, I could totally get it. So just finding a way around it to be support is what it ends up being when they're ready. Because when they're ready, you know, COVID isn't waiting, you know, for someone to escape, right? So just finding ways that you can be a support is all it boils down to, and always being ready and letting the next person know this is how you can do it too. This is how you can be a support. And if you can't talk to them in person, saying, or they've expressed to you on your walk in a park, wherever, they said, okay, this is what this is what it looks like for me. Say, look, this is the DV agency, and I'm not sure if you guys can correct me if they're actual DV agencies in Bermuda and the Bahamas. Are there?
Yes.
It is one here,
They have websites?
Yes.
Pointing them to the website, saying, look, I can't be there, but look, go to the specific page on the website, create, send them the link, and letting them see in black and white, this is what's going to happen. When you call and you speak to an advocate, this is what's going to happen. Or even you picking up the phone, if you're not familiar with the DV agency itself, you pick up the phone and see what that process looks like. Ask them, you know, when this victim calls, what's going to happen? So now you're more educated to relay to them about what the initial process will look like. Just giving them empowerment, because again, when you get to that point, man, it is hard. It is hard. It is hard stuff. And I applaud folks that go all in at the very end, saying, look, I want to press charges, I want to do this. But for a lot of people, that's not the case. I know for me, when I sat in the emergency room after my last attack, it was the first and only time I went to the hospital, to the ER, that I was sitting there saying, there's no way I'm going to tell this doctor that I've gone through this. There's no way that I want this. In my mind, I'm thinking police are going to get involved. I'm thinking my school's going to find out. I'm thinking my job's going to find out. I'm thinking my family's going to know. There's no way that I want anybody to know. But I didn't know. And so when you know, you do better, right? If you're empowered with the information, it takes you to a next level where you don't feel that sense of bubbleness that you're all alone and this is what you, right? So just being a support in any which way possible.
Thank you so much, Laverne. And I know on the replay, everybody's gonna just love this insight that everybody's it's just so amazing. So thank you for sharing for those who's gonna be watching and don't know, and just your word might just be that word. One of the things I want to ask a question. I'll do the next question. But before I do that, one of the things I remember is being in that hospital room, and I remember an actual nurse saying to me, what did he ask him to leave the room? And she said, was it him? And I just looked at her, leaned to the side, and just tears just poured down my face. And she was very in tune. I don't know if she was trained in it or she could have been a survivor, but she gave me such a speech about, she was so casual with it. She told me what to do, how to do it. This is gonna kill you if you stay. And she went through all of that. And then she said, I'm gonna let you make that decision. And so I don't remember who she is for the life of me. And I always wish that I could remember who she was those years ago, because to thank her for being that one person, that one of those people that say yes. But when she did walk out, she asked me, do you want him to come back in? And she said, and I said, yes. She said, okay, well, I'll just let you know that we're gonna be watching from outside.
Oh, wow.
The moment you feel, this was Bermuda hospital board, the moment you feel, feel unsafe, just put your hand up and we'll be right in. And
Yeah.
so, you know, those little, even though I didn't leave right away, but those little things are very comforting for us. Okay, so my question, ladies, is this. Each and every one of you, question is this. When was the first time you told somebody in your space, in your circle, one of your friends, your coworker, your colleague, somebody, when was the first time that you admitted to someone that, guess what, I am being abused? And what did it feel like? What did you expect from it?
For me, I was actually getting ready to attend a meeting, and my boss at the time came into my office. She wanted some information urgently, and I did not answer. I just went quiet. And as she goes, "Are you okay?" And I just bursted out crying. And so she closed my office door, and she was like, "What's going on?" And I told her, I said, "You're the first person that I'm telling this." And she was so upset, and she called my dad. And my dad, I went to my dad and sat in his office and just broke down and cried. And it was like kind of like a relief, but I was still scared because I was like, I don't even know. I don't know if I want you to tell anybody. Just keep this between us for now. But I was relieved about it. My dad was just like, "Just remember who you are. Do you want me to call him?" And I was like, "No." But that was about 7 years before I still decided to leave the marriage. But that was the first person I had told about it. And it still took me years to tell everybody else. But yeah, it was a huge load off on my shoulder. But yeah.
Yeah, I can totally relate to the weight, and I still to this day have not told anyone everything that I went through. But the friend that I did tell, that I spoke about earlier, that I said, if something happens to me, I want you to know it was him. I felt like she knows, which is a weight, but I still kept the secret very close to my chest. It was more of, I want him to be, tried and I want him to receive punishment if something should happen to me. I don't want it to, go without someone knowing what had happened to me and who did it. But when I did, tell her some of the things that were happening, she said, "Oh, is that why you've lost so much weight lately?" As I lost about 15 pounds in weeks. I had shown her, a few bruises on my wrists and things like that. But I still, I hadn't really told anybody everything that's happened. I told a couple close friends some of the, things that have happened, and their reaction is always of shock. And also their response, some people that I maybe aren't my best, besties, they're like, "But you're so happy all the time." Like, they're shocked that it happened to me. But when I do find that comfort level to talk about, some things that have happened in that relationship, years ago, people I find more are kind of flabbergasted that it was me, that it happened to me. You lift women up and you help people and you're so happy and you motivate everybody at, at work. And I think there is more shock when I've talked about it after, but I think only told one person when it was happening. Yeah.
Wow. And so same thing with Jennifer and Kama to some degree. So I, at the time, so I had alluded to a friend of mine who lived in the apartment building that I ended up living in after the last attack. She lived next door to the building, and she was being abused. And so throughout the relationship, we would sort of commune in misery, but also say, that's how men are, because that's what we knew. That's my man, and that's what he's doing to me, and that's today's story. And just leave it at that. But I think the first person outside of that I had let know was 10 years later when I sat in the interview portion of this initial pageant that I taken part in. And they asked me why did I want to pick domestic violence as a platform. And for the first time, I went into a little bit about what my mom had experienced and a very tiny little bit about what I had gone through. And the entire time that I was relating this, tears, snot running down my face, because that release that you talk about was there. It was coming out. And I'm saying these things to these folks, and I'm wondering, my God, they're going to disqualify me. They're going to say I'm an emotional wreck. What the heck am I doing? Laverne, what? It was like an outer body experience. And it's like I'm talking to myself, like, stop, don't say anymore. And when I was done, they said, thank you. I looked up because my head was down in shame. And at least there was 5 judges, at least 4 of them were crying.
Yeah.
And when I was done, 2 of the judges that were female came to me and said, me too. And that's where I knew that, Jesus Christ, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah.
This isn't a thing that happens rampantly in Trinidad in my neighborhood, because, not just my dad, my other friends of his were doing the same thing. And so when we talk about, bystanders, people are doing the same things in their house. So how are they going to, pull him up? So again, I realized at that point that I was not the only one in America that was going through this. For real. And it was like a eureka moment. And I'm like, my God, I got to keep talking. So yeah, I think that was the very first time for me.
And I think you wanted to say something, Kama? Oh, and I think it's important that we point out those points, because for me, I never told anyone. I didn't tell anyone for years. And when I tell someone was when I was in school. I was doing my bachelor's degree. And they had said that you have to go and volunteer your time somewhere in one of these places. And so I said, oh, okay, let me look at your list. And I looked at the list, and I started at one facility. That was the first one I started at, and I had to get training and all those things. And I went to work. I was there like every other evening. I used to do a night shift with one of the, this lady, Yvonne. Many Yvonnes thank God for that, but she was amazing. She taught me all about different things and, done trainings. But then I worked right alongside the women and their children. Okay, that was the first facility. It wasn't until I went to the second facility that I worked at that one day we were actually in, and one of the mothers were coming to the concert, to the front desk, and her child, she was holding her child and rocking her child, wouldn't stop crying. And I said, give me the baby, give me the baby. It's okay, you need a break. So as we was having a break, later on we went to have our meeting in the area where we used to have our meeting. And it finally hit me that I was also a victim of domestic violence. And that's why I'm trying, this was in 2006 maybe, and it happened to me in 19 something. So I say that to say, not everybody, we don't all name it. And sometimes we push it in the back of our mind and get in situations where we're so busy helping other people that we cannot even recognize what it is. But it wasn't until that moment, that setting, that I realized I needed help. I needed help because I started going to work and I would just break down because I was I was actually feeling it. Like I know what you feel like. And so for me, I had to get therapy, which I'm glad I did, because what that did, it evoked. And a lot of people say therapy. And that's a lot of Black families I know, for one, our culture. Therapy? You don't need to see nobody. I'm your therapist, your mama, your cousin, your brother.
Right.
And I was studying psychology, right? So really, come on, I needed to do it. But I had to now dig deep into why was I showing up to my volunteer position in a job? Why was I showing up there and hearing these women's stories and just boo-hooing with them? Like I was a mess. So we was both messes, right? But it was that moment when I had to get therapy and realize that I too had to earn that part of my life that I didn't want to see for what it is. And so that came with a lot of things. But all that's to say, sometimes we don't earn up to because we have to work on ourselves, we have to work on it. And that's one of the things I want to say as well. We have to be very careful when we are into these spaces with individuals. We see everybody wants to be an advocate, everybody wants to help, and all kudos to you. But I can assure you, until we work on ourselves, we're not going to be as effective right? Because we're going to have a lot of transference. We're going to have a lot of how we feel, how we felt on these people. And are we really going to be effective in helping them? Not necessarily in the end. And we may give wrong information, we may give false advice because of how we felt, how we wish we handled it. And so if I can leave, if anything, on this note, is that we have to work on ourselves. Go get your therapy, go get your counseling as to why you went through it, and, you know, work through it to know that now I'm a survivor. So that was in 2007. I came back to Bermuda in 2010. End of December 2009. 2010, I started working in certain environments with people, and I was getting more of that. People telling me the stories, and I'm like, everybody's telling me, I already know what you're going through. Nobody imagined it. So it wasn't until 2000, I look all the years, it wasn't until 2016 that I told part, because I have never told my entire story, but that I had let part of my story out. And so it was tons of years, and I was into a happy marriage when I did. And so we have to get therapy, we have to work on ourselves. It's not just a quick fix. Oh, I want to do because he's doing it, or let me do. You have to work on you first. That's so important.
Yes, I agree completely with you, Tina. And I did this, I mean, same. I actually went to an individual therapist after I kind of gotten out and settled, but I felt like she didn't understand at all. She just kind of looked at me blank. And I said, have you ever been through this before? She said, no, but I went to school and I learned da, 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 da. And I said, okay, this isn't for me. And I went to a group and everyone, it's so comfortable because you're all coming from the same place, no matter who you are. And I knew I had to go because I was very, I can be very sarcastic, funny sarcastic, yes, but I was identifying that I was being like nasty sarcastic to men that thought they were all this and making, you know, comments at you because you're a woman, or joking around, oh yeah, I buy you a drink, da da da. And I would just like, my tongue sharpened and I cut them down. And I didn't like who I was becoming. And I said, I need to go get help. And I never identified and said, oh, I'm a victim. And I think I obviously know what, I went through. I wasn't in denial by any means, but I think for myself is that I could separate that it's something that I went through. It's something that happened to me. It was not my identity. It was, that's not who I am. That's what happened to me. That's what I went through. That's what I learned from. And I think it was important in kind of helping me get to the other side and become a happy, well-adjusted for the most part, I guess. We all have our days, but it's to say, like, I wasn't walking around every day going, oh, I'm a victim, this is what happened to me. This is what I went through. I came out on the other side. Anyone watching, you can come out on the other side. You can be happy. It's when you're in this, if you're going through it right now, you're stuck in this survival mode of getting through hour by hour, day by day, and you're just trying to survive, and you don't see the end result. And I mean, all of us can attest that you can make it through, and there is totally light at the end of the tunnel. And I understand, we know what it feels like. We know that living in fear every day, but that you can make it through.
So in my closing, I know, are we wrapping? Is this sort of the wrap?
Yes.
I don't want to jump ahead. It sounded like that, so I don't want to jump the gun. But in my closing, there are two things that I want to point out. And as Jennifer and Kama mentioned, and Tina mentioned, that succinctly, all of the burden falls on us to sort of pick up the pieces when we go through this. We have to seek the counseling. We have to, find the help. We have to get ourselves right after everything has happened. But understanding that 90% of the time, males are perpetrators, and involving them in this conversation is really important too, right? We can shout from the roof. It's in my belief that we can shout from the rooftops as women doing this work. We're spinning our wheels if we're not involving men in the conversation. So really important to talk to the boys in your circle, right? Having them understand that how the way that they communicate to girls is really important, because this cycle starts very early. I talked about teen DV workshops as early as 12. You can start talking to boys about what relationships are. My son is 7, he just turned 7. He knows that putting your hands on a girl is wrong, right? Keep your hands to yourself. If you like somebody, you speak and use your words, right?
Yeah.
And when I say like somebody at 7, I mean, I mean if you like them as a friend, right? So just
Like you want to share your
FYI.
cupcake with them.
Right. You want to share, right? You don't pull their hair. You keep your hands to
No.
yourself and you use your words. But as old as
Yeah.
12, you can start talking about, there's a great resource that I'd love to put out. I can share with you, Siobhan and Tina, afterwards. It's called loveisrespect.org, and it's a teen dating violence website.
Yeah.
And it easily breaks down for parents, for teens, what this issue looks like, right? Parents may have, some hard ways approaching their kids about dating, dating violence, and all of these things. It really breaks it down for them. And then for teens, it also gives them some awareness about what healthy relationships should look like, right? And they have the ability to chat. They can text folks to talk about issues that they may be experiencing. So really important to talk to teens in your circle about what healthy relationships are, and involving boys, men and boys. It is so important to involve them in this conversation, because again, 90% of the time they're seen as the perpetrators. So involving them, whether or not somebody may be an abuser or not, just having them know that this type of conversation happens, and it's not. It's okay to talk about it too as a man, right? And then they take the message and talk to their guys, right? So they're at the barbershop and they're on the basketball court, and they've spoke to Tina, spoke to Siobhan, they spoke to Cam at church, they've talked to Jennifer at work, and they now know, hey, now I know better. Man, I gotta call my brother out. I should do better. It's as simple as that. It really just is a ripple effect, again, from all avenues. So that's my ending point. Just really involving everyone in the conversation is really important.
Kama, what do you want to close with?
Yes, I would just like to say that never in my life that I'll ever be thinking that I'll be in a discussion talking about being a domestic violence survivor, victim survivor, but here I am. I am a survivor. I still have my challenges every day. It's not easy recovering from something like this that has happened for so many years. And, there's other things that I have to deal with, but I'm getting the help, and I am so thankful and blessed that I'm in this space now, and I'm helping other people, and I've met some amazing people like you ladies, and I'm gonna keep doing it because I know for a fact that I've helped some people. It's just very heartwarming when someone comes to me and says, thank you for sharing your story. I've gotten out of my marriage. And I'm just like, you're very welcome. So I'm just glad that I'm here, although for this reason, it's a blessing.
Yeah.
Well,
if I may, because I was holding a little bit, let me
go ahead.
Tie into 2 points. Yes, I agree. I remember, I think Karma was saying about being, and a few of you mentioned being there for that person who may be going through. And that was something that I didn't share on prior platform, but I had a foreign lady here who called me at 12 midnight on my phone, and I was dead tired, and she talked until 2 a.m. in the morning because she was frightened. Something was going on in the house, and I told my husband, I said, it's no man I'm talking to, it's a woman. And I said, did you want me to come for you? So it was a situation during lockdown that, like I said, she was crying. I said, I could come for you. Even if I guess they have to arrest me, I'll come for you if it's, and take you for a drive. And if you want to, I have a spare bedroom, you can sit right here. So that was one. And you always want to be there for that person, no matter what, put yourself, there for that person. And I listened to her. She vented. I made sure I texted her that morning, are you okay? She said, yes. The person, her husband must have gone by his mom or whatever after the whole time. So I make sure I checked on her. Another thing in terms of what I would like to see before we wrap up in Bermuda, I mentioned on a previous, I don't know if some of you, I would say Karma and Jennifer, I was in the beauty industry in Bermuda briefly, and I know Kamar mentioned covering up bruises. I've done it. I've covered up bust lips, bruised eyes.
Yes.
You know, a lot of women confided in me in that professional setting. I would love to see where, like you say, Laverne mentioned, and Tina and you ladies mentioned, I would like to see professional persons, barbers, hairstylists, makeup artists get the training to know the signs, because I didn't know where to tell them to reach out, and I agree. Bermuda could do more. So people
Yes.
know, I mean, people said things to me, they confided, and I felt helpless. Besides covering it up, which was my job, I felt helpless because I didn't know where to tell them to go, you know,
Yes.
get that help. So I know Tina and I discussed some stuff, some initiative, hopefully, you know, we can bring through, but it's much more that can be done in Bermuda, and that we are hoping to continue to put out there, you know, how they 6 feet apart, little signs. I was looking at them, I said, we need to have stop domestic violence on those little signs. Whilst we started 6 feet apart, we can look at that. It's so much initiative with law enforcement. Collectively, you know, unity is strength in numbers. We could work together, and I know I keep saying that it may not happen, but hey, if it takes a few of us to get it done and some change, systematic legislatures, I'm hoping that that's done. So I really appreciate you ladies. Tina, you could close out, for your time, for coming out. Trust me, people are watching, people are calling us, and it is resonating, you know, with someone. If we could save one life, we're hoping to save everyone, but if we could save one person from their demise, then we've done something.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah. Gosh, there's so much. But what I want to say, I get so emotional when it gets to these points, because once again, this is very dear to our hearts, right? But once again, we have shown that you can survive. You know, that's so important. You can survive. We all have different faces. I have a master's degree in criminal justice. She has a degree. She has a degree in this. We all come from different backgrounds, right? But we've all endured domestic violence. But one of the things I wanted to share really quickly is that 2 days ago, you know how you go on your phone and you see your archives. And I happened to come across my very first video in 2017. And I remember that's the first time I started my business in 16, and I started my videos the very next year. And I remember looking at that video, before I did it, it was so nerve-wracking, but I listened to it again 3 nights ago, and the exact same feeling I got when I did it, I got it listening to it again. And one of the things I want to say is that, and part of that feeling was wondering what people would say about me, what people would think about me. And like I said, my background is criminal justice. So when I did that, I was working with majority men, right? And so my background, people say, you work with women, you don't know what men. I worked with men for years, adult men and young boys. And so it was a lot of fear around what people's gonna think about me, how they'll perceive me. Do I do it or do I leave it alone? I just want to share that as a result of me posting that video in 2017, June, that exact same month, 11 women walked away from relationships. And the rest is history. You see what I mean? And I'm really saying all that to say it was very nerve-wracking and all those things for me to do. But me sharing a part of me and my truth helps other people to see they can do the same. That was almost 4 years, 3 years ago, right? And it's been going, it's been a domino effect ever since. But I just want to say that moving forward, ladies, those of you that don't know, okay, Kama actually is in one of my support groups. We all get together and share.
Yes.
So we'll be revamping that again. We've been struggling trying to get that going with the social distancing. And so I've known Kama for a while. Kama's also on one of my talk shows, Relationship Theory, which will be coming out soon. We recorded that months back.
March,
right? Darius Richardson and I will also be doing some things moving forward. You'll see that that's been in the making. We'll be on CITV this coming week. So it's constant. I'm doing all these workshops, I'm doing all these things. I'm also here to train if you need me to train you. I don't talk about a lot of what I do in my background because I guess that's part of me just keeping myself humble. But if anybody wants to be trained or you want to become in your job, I am free to do so. I am also very much qualified. And I say sometimes I'm overqualified because I'm a bit tall, right? So I can, but one of the things I want to close with is this. For you who believes that your degree or your living environment or the accolades that you get or your social bodies matter to you more than your health, your wealth, and your well-being, and even your life, I beg to differ. I beg to differ. And I implore you and invite you to give me a call, give one of us a call, whomever you're comfortable with. And just start telling your story. And you'll be surprised once you start telling your story, you'll feel 100 pounds lighter, one. And two, you realize how much you really have bundled up. And you'll start learning that I'm not a victim. I am a victor. I didn't deserve this. I don't deserve these behaviors. You will start putting yourself out there and you'll feel so much freer. And for guys, because a lot of guys follow me and send me messages, right? For you guys, you know, I'm always going to bat for you. I've worked for you for many years, worked on your behalf. You too can get the help that you need. And, you know, Darius and I work together quite often on doing projects. So just reach out, because we can't, there's no me without my husband, right? And so if I'm in love with my husband and I'm here wondering why he's beating me up, he needs the help, or vice versa. So go in and get the help individually. Go in and get the help that you need. And guess what? Because you deserve it, right? You are foremost the most important person in your life. You deserve it. So that's all I really have to say. I thank you, ladies, for joining us. I thank you for trusting. I thank you, Siobhan, for reaching out and wanting to do certain things with me as a collaborative. Yeah, I do, because there's so many people that do that. And so I thank you. I thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
It was so nice meeting you, Laverne. It was so nice
meeting you all.
Kama and Laverne,
Yes,
nice to meet
nice
you.
to meet all of you.
Here, ladies.
All of you. And I will share it with you ladies once we're done so you can put it on your page. But thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you, guys.
much.
Okay, now I'm going to the beach, guys.
Participants.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
All right. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend. Thank you.
You
Do the
too.
same,
Take
guys.
care.
Much love and
All
hugs
right.
to you.
Bye.